Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin Perek Shishi, the sixth Perek in the Hilchos Yibbum VChalitzah, in the Rambam's Sefer Nashim, which now in the previous Parakim that we defined what is Yibbum, what is Chalitza, now we talk about the brothers and the Yavamis that are appropriate to have Yibbum and or Chalitza. So the Rambam begins Halacha Alf defining four types of Yavamim, four types of brothers in their relationship with this Halacha of Yibbum and Chalitza. Says the Rambam, Yesh Achim, that are brothers, Sheroyim Liyibbum, or L'Chalitza, that they're appropriate to do either one. They could choose to do either the Yibbum, which is to marry the Yavama, or to do Chalitza. Now, the Yesh Achim, our brothers, She'enim Ruim, Loy Liyibbum, but Loy L'Chalitza. They're not fit to do either one, not Yibbum or Chalitza, and Ve'elam Zika Klal. And that's because there's no bond between them and the Yavama at all. Rather, the Yavama is immediately permitted to go ahead and marry another person without Chalitza, like a regular widow that does not have the halacha of the Zika of Yibbum. Then there are a third category of brothers. Sharuin l'chalitza, they're appropriate to have the mitzvah of chalitza, but ve'inrum liyibbum, but they're not appropriate to do yibbum. And then v'yeshachan, there are brothers she'imruim liyibbum ve'inrum l'chalitza, that actually they're fit to do yibbum and not chalitza. So essentially, with these two variables, you can have four different types of categories depending how you define either all, nothing, one, not the other, or the other and not that one. Says Ram in Halacha Beis, Ve'elehem she'ein lem zika klal. So Ram opens up with those that have no zika bond at all, and they are sris chama. If let's say the yavam was born castrated, where he never had an opportunity to have children, or vandreginus, who has both genders, signs of gender of male and female, and the reason for them why there's no zika bond at all is because they're not fit to have children, and not only that, but they never had an opportune time in their life from when they were born to father a child. In contrast, as we'll see later on regarding Sris Adam, if a person was castrated manually, where he had a Shasa Kasher, here these individuals never had, and therefore they've never included in the category of having the halacha of Yibbum, which is all about fathering a child from his dead brother. Halacha Gimel. Now, next category, these are people who could do Yibbum, but they can't do Chalitza, which are Hacheresh v'Ashayt v'Akan, deaf, mute, mentally deranged, or minor, because these individuals are always considered that they don't have intelligence. Hence, for the law of Chalitza, which the Ram had mentioned in Perek Dal Halachat Zayin, that they both have to be doing it with the intention and the lishma of Chalitza, and they don't have das. Now, in contrast, they could do Yibbum because the bia doesn't need to have das. It's just to have a maisa bia, an act of cohabitation, which the Ram himself in Perek Beis had said that the bia with the Yavama could even be where it was done b'shaygig, by mistake, without intentionality. So, as long as you have a maisa bia, they could do an act, which these individuals could, as long as he's over 9 years old, or the chersha shaita. They could do Yibbum, but they can't do Chalitza. Now, however, the Ram clarifies, says, when the deaf mute is going to do Yibbum, so then he can never ever remove this Yavama, because the Bia itself make this Yavama into his regular wife as a married woman. Now, he can't give, because as we said, although he doesn't have das, the Bia of the Yavama doesn't need das. Now, the Engerish of Gerish and Gemur, but now to divorce her, he wasn't able to do Chalitza, so he has to do Yibbum. But now that she's his wife, he can't divorce her because he doesn't have das to be Megash. As Rambam says in Perek Beis Halachas Gerushin, you have to have das when you're divorcing. Now, this is all talking about when his Yavama is coming from his brother that was a mentally sane person, which their marriage was a biblical kedushin. And therefore the Zika bond that he has with her is also biblical. And therefore the get of a cheresh, which only rabbinic cannot remove that Zika bond that's biblical. But if, let's say, the Yavam is from his brother that died was also a cheresh, which that was only rabbinic, then just like that marriage was with Remiza, he would also be able to divorce her with Remiza. But he was talking about where his brother was a Pikeach, and therefore he would never be able to divorce this Yavama ever. And also, when the 9-year-old, we said he cannot do Chalitza, but he could do Yibbum. When he does Yibbum, then if he also doesn't want to remain married to her, he wouldn't be able to divorce until he becomes an adult, like we explained in Perek Hey, because he also cannot give a divorce. And therefore, he would have to wait till she becomes an adult. Halacha Daled, next category. This group, they could only do Chalitza and not Yibbum. And they are Hasvekis. They're the women that there's a doubt. For example, if let's say that his brother who passed away had married one of two sisters. We don't know which one he got engaged to. So it comes out each one of them is a Safek Achais Ishta. Each one is a doubt. Is it his real wife's sister, because we don't know which one it is. So if this Yavama was a Suffolk Erva on his brother who passed away, or Ufatsua Daka, if let's say the Yavam had his testicles crushed, or his male member got cut, not naturally, but rather manually, or all types of castration where his testicles were cut, or if he's missing one of them, or if they were pierced, or vazakan beyaser, or someone that's very old, this Yavam, he really lost his virility, he lost his vigor, and he's weak, and therefore he cannot cohabit and father a child. Are also, these are what's called these are individuals that do chalitza and not Yibbum. Now, v'mbal sris adam. If let's say an individual that was castrated manually and not because of an illness, so he's included in Petzua Daka in this category of crushed testicles. If he cohabits with the Yavama Kana, he has acquired her, and the reason why is Sharei Haisalei Shasakaisha. This individual had an opportune time before he was castrated that he was able to father a child. Now he cannot, but again, he was considered in the category of doing Yibbum. So therefore there's a kinyan, umaitzi beget, but now he has to divorce her with a get, neshu asal bakal, because a Jewish woman is not permitted to marry a Petzua Daka man with crushed testicles. Now, in contrast, if let's say he became castrated through an illness, then he would be permitted, and so too the elderly person would be permitted to remain with the Yavama. But here the Sris Adam, so he acquires her because ultimately he had a Shasakaiser, but he would have to divorce her because he's forbidden to be married to a regular Jewish woman. Now, Vatumtum, which is a person that doesn't show any signs of gender, it's not clear if he's male or female, he also has to chalitza and not to Yibbum. Neshu Safik, because he's a doubt. In other words, can't do Yibbum because he can't. And chalitza he's doing because of doubt, because maybe he's a male. Now, obviously with his brothers, he doesn't do chalitza because maybe he's a girl, and the Yavam is not going to be exempted, but if he's the only brother, then he'll do chalitza because maybe he's a male. Now, let's say that skin which covers the genital area, it tears, and you see that there's a male member and he's a male, so then then if he wants to, he can do chalitza, if he wants to, he can do Yibbum, which is like any regular brother. And so to Usharach, and that was the third category. And says the Rambam, Usharach and all the other brothers, they're oicholtz and that's the fourth category. They can do either chalitza or Yibbum. So those are four types of Yavaman. Again, either, like we just said, either they could do either chalitza or Yibbum, or they don't have any zik at all, they don't do chalitza or Yibbum, like we said, this was Chama and Dragoness. And then there are those who do Yibbum and not chalitza, because it's interesting that they don't have the das, so they can't do the chalitza, but the Yibbum doesn't require that, like a chershet of a cotton. And then we have those that only do chalitza and not Yibbum, because either of a suffix, or because that they don't fit into the category of being married to her, so you can't do Yibbum, but they still have the halacha of the general context of doing Yibbum, and therefore they're going to do chalitza and not Yibbum. Halacha hey, now the Rambam moves on to the four types of Yavam Mois, regarding the women, their aspect as it relates to being fit for Yibbum Chalitza. Says the Rambam, yes, Yavamis, there are, because we were just speaking up until now the variables as it relates to the men, to the brothers. Now he says, yes, Yavamis, there are the Yavamis, which are the wives, the widows, Shein Ru'uyas La Chalitza Yibbum, that there are some that are fit for doing Chalitza or Yibbum. Now, the yes, Yavamis, there are some Yavamis, Shein Ru'uyas La Chalitza Yibbum, not Chalitza and not Yibbum. And therefore, they don't have a bond at all. They're permitted to get married to someone else right away. Then, a third category, same idea as with the men, here with the women. There are those that are fit for chalitza and not for Yibbum. And then there are Yivamis that are fit for Yibbum and not for chalitza. As Rambam explains, these are those that could do Yibbum but cannot do chalitza, which is equivalent, really, what we said in Halacha Gimel. If she's a deaf mute, if she's mentally deranged, or if she's a minor, because they don't have intelligence to read and to understand, where they can't say the parsha that they need to say by chalitza. So therefore the chalitza of charesha actually is totally insignificant. It's like not even chalitza psula, because she's deficient in two areas. One is that she can't say what she needs to say, and B, she does not have das. Contrast, if either one of them is just mute, but not deaf mute, so even though they can't speak, they still have intelligence, and that would just be considered what's called chalitza psula. Would be this, like, it's invalid, but it is a chalitza. And so to a minor, even though she does not have intelligence, but she could say, there's also chalitza psula. In contrast, the chareshes doesn't have either one of those. That's like as if nothing was done at all. You can't do chalitza. There's nothing in the chalitza at all. Now, So again, they could only do Yibbum and not Chalitza. Now, if the Yavam wants to divorce this deaf mute, in contrast when we said the man is deaf mute, he's stuck with her, he can't divorce because we need his das. But if she's a deaf mute and he wants to divorce her beget achas yibalaisa, would get after that he cohabited with her, because again he can't do chalitza with her, he could only do yibum with her, then harizim magarsh, he could divorce her, because by a get, which is now it's like a regular marriage, you don't need the woman's awareness, you don't need her consciousness or her consent. Halacha zayin. Next category. These are the women that you can only do chalitza with and not yibum. And they are isur alavan, if there's a negative prohibition in the Torah of being married to them, mashnias, or if they're the rabbinic secondary category of arayas, or isur aseh, if they're forbidden by a dint of a positive commandment, kamesh's bar, like we're going to explain later on halacha yud. Now, b'chol isha, she's sveik megereshes. Any woman that it's in doubt if she was divorced from her first husband. For example, he threw her a get and it was not clear if it's closer to her or closer to him. So then she also, the halach is going to be only chalitza and not yibum, because shemi yivka be'erva, because maybe this yavam is going to encounter a woman that's forbidden to him of kares, like an erva, because if it's true that his brother who passed away had divorced her, she's forbidden him as an erva. Even if his brother subsequently dies around 8 children, she was already divorced. And therefore she's forbidden to him. So you can't do Yibbum, but again, you would have to do Chalitza because maybe she wasn't divorced. Now, but let's say, not a Safek Gerishin, but let's say this woman that's now widowed, actually there's a doubt if his brother had actually even gotten engaged to her, where he had thrown the money of Kedusha to her and it wasn't clear who was closer to, then then she'll have the status as all other Yavamas, and that is a Chalitza. You can do either Chalitza or Yibbum to her. Shein kan davar, like it says the Rambam, there's nothing really to be concerned over here because Maman Shach. Either way you look at it. If she was engaged, so there's a mitzvah to do Yibbum. If she wasn't engaged to the brother, then she's like a regular random woman, where unrelated, and therefore he's permitted to marry her. To the wife of a deaf mute, Uzikena, an elderly woman, Bakara, and a barren woman. Harin kashar kol Yavamas, they're like all other Yavamas, which is Ratzah Chalitz, Ratzah Mayam. If you want, you can do Chalitza or Yibbum. Why? Because Shazakena, Bakara, because an elderly woman and a woman that's barren, which through illness or through some wound, although they're not able to have children right now, and the whole point is to have children. But Ha'ifla and Shazakaish, as I mentioned this I did before, they at one time had an opportune time. So therefore that is including them in the category. It's only those which never had an opportunity, as we're going to see shortly, that they're totally excluded. But these women are included in the halacha of either Yibbum or Chalitza. And halacha Chesram moves on to the next category. These are the women that are exempt from Chalitza and from Yibbum, which means that they have no zikah at all. They are Eishes Reschama, the wife of a man who was born castrated, Vandreginus, or if he was, the husband was androgynous, or Ve'eshes Hashaita Ve'eshes HaKatan, the wife of a mentally deranged person, or the wife of a minor, or Va'ilness, if she's an illness, which she's also born that she's incapable of having children, Umishihi Arva, or if she's an erva that's forbidden to the yavam because she's related to the brother-in-law, to the yavam, and would be liable for cohabitation karas. And why all these excluded from the whole parasha of Yibbum and Chalitza? Because the pasuk says in the Baruch Chavei, says the reason why you have to do Yibbum is that the brother who died without any children, his name should not be deleted from the Jewish people. Now that's pratless reschama v'adreginus. That's excluding the obligation of doing Yibbum on his wife if the one who passed away was born incapable of having children, or an androgynous who was also not. Their name was always obliterated. However, they were born not able to have children. So Arim came in different aspects, so that they're in their own category, and they were not included in this halacha of Yibbum Chalitza. So too, the pasuk continues. So it's going to be the first one that's going to be born. That excludes if the wife is an islandess, that she was never fit to have a child, so there's no asher teled, because the whole point is that the first one from that union, that child's going to take the name of the father who passed away. What do you mean asher teled? The yavama, if the islandess is not fit to have a child, so she's excluded. And when the pasuk says lisi eshes hames, that the wife of the one that passed away should not go and marry someone else, rather she's obligated to have the zika bond with the yavam, that's probably Eishes Shait V'Katan. That excludes the wife of a mentally deranged or a minor, because it's not Eishes Hames. There's no halacha of marriage for a Shaita or a Katan. And when it says L'kacha Loy Isha, that he should take her as a wife, That's Pradla Erva. That excludes if the Yavama is an Erva, She'en Laba Lekuchen, where Kedushin is not Taifis in the Erva, so that obviously excludes her from this whole category, as we see from all these drashas of the Pasuk by Yibbum VChalitzah, from being in the Zika of either Chalitza or Yibbum. Now, Halacha Tes Ram continues regarding if the Yavama is forbidden on the Yavam. Says Ram, Kitzad Yavama Shi Erva Yavama. Now he clarifies the last thing we just said. How do you have a case where the Yavama, the widow, is an Erva, a Chi of Karas, to the relationship that she has with the Yavam? So, again, for example, Shahais, and the reason why that's important is because obviously his brother, it was not, because then it wouldn't have been his wife, because Kedushin is not Taifis in an Erva. So it was his brother's wife, but it's not, and it wasn't an Erva to him, but it's an Erva to the Yavam. It's because, for example, because they're talking about where his sister-in-law is not only his brother's wife, it's also his wife's sister, or his wife's mother, or his wife's daughter. Oh, so that makes it only an Erva for the Yavam, not for his brother who passed away. That woman, as we mentioned in the previous halacha, is totally exempted from the whole halacha and the whole parsha of Yibbum Chalitza. He doesn't have on her a bond at all, like it says in the pasuk. He's going to take her as a wife and do Yibbum, which tells you Mishru Lekuchen, only that which is fit for taking the Kedushin Teisaba, and that Kedushin will take effect in her. He's a Kukul Yavam. She has a bond to the Yavam, but an Erva which has no Kedushin to be Teifis is not included in the parsha at all. Now, halacha Yud. However, let's say let's say the Yavama was forbidden on her Yavam, Isra Lav, only by dint of a negative prohibition. But again, to the husband was permitted, for example, let's say the Kayin that was a Chal married a kosher woman, where she became a Chalala by having Bia with a Chal. So it comes out that the Yavam, who's a regular Kayin, she was permitted to her husband, because her husband wasn't forbidden to her, she only became a Chalala subsequently, but now she's forbidden to her Yavam. Or let's say she's forbidden to her Yavam based on a positive commandment, or she was a secondary Erva. So here the halacha is, as we mentioned in halacha Zayin, here she's forbidden to do Yibbum, but she's going to do Chalitza. Now, and the question is, why does she require Chalitza? What do you mean? She's not fit for him. He cannot fulfill B'lekachalei Le'isha. The reason is Nishiyesh B'lekuchen, and this is what we had mentioned before in contrast to the Erva. Here, Kedushin is Taifas. However, Kedushin Taifas ben Harin Zekukas Liyavim. Although it's forbidden because of Isra Lav or Isra Asay or because of Rabbinic Isser, but Harin Zekukas Liyavim. But there is a bond to the Yavam because you see Kedushin would take effect. And the truth is, moreover, we're actually going the other way. First, we're asking, okay, why doing Chalitza? Saying no, there is a Zika bond over here, although there's Isser, but you see that Kedushin would be Taifas. Now, because actually, the truth is actually that he would even be able to do Yibbum. Why able to do Yibbum? There's a negative provision in the Torah to marry this woman. The reason is, doing Yibbum is a positive commandment. Anytime you find a contradictory positive commandment and negative prohibition, which is the negative prohibition to marry this woman, but it's a positive commandment of marrying her for Yibbum, the halacha is that the positive commandment comes along and overrides and pushes away the negative prohibition. So the truth is, he should be allowed to do Yibbum. But the rabbis decreed that no, you should not do the Yibbum on a woman that has negative prohibition, and not even the secondary erva. And the reason is a gzeira. The rabbinic concern. What's the concern? Because maybe he's going to cohabit with her not just once, but a second time. That bia, doing it a second time, is forbidden. There's no mitzvah over there. Why? The positive commandment of doing Yibbum is only the first act of cohabitation, which is enough to plant a seed to have a child. So therefore, actually, since biblically is actually permitted to go and have the first bia, because really you would say, if he goes and violates this rabbinic decree of not doing Yibbum, and he does the first act of bia with this woman that's a negative prohibition of a positive commandment, for sure we don't have to tell you that this, what we're about to tell you, would apply if she's only rabbinically forbidden to him as a secondary erva. So then he has biblically had a bona fide, full-fledged kinyan in this yavama, and therefore at this point, all he has to do to remove her is with a get. Again, he has to remove her because there's no more mitzvah, but again, the kinyan took effect, and and therefore her and all her co-wives are all permitted to marry other people because they were exempted with this biblical fulfillment of Yibbum with the first bia that he did with this Isra Lav and Isra Aseh. Now, if you have a Yavama that was widowed from having already had marriage, Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol is the Yavam, and he cohabits with this widow. Lo nifted tzara, so the co-wife is not exempted, which usually if one of them have bia, the other ones are exempted. Here the co-wife is not going to be exempted. Because here it's worse off, because the Kohen Gadol has a positive commandment and the negative prohibition of marrying a be'ula. He's supposed to marry only a basula, and that's a negative and a positive. Because in contrast of, let's say she was a widow only from Erison, where she'd still be a basula, so it would only be a negative prohibition where he's not taking almana, but she'd still be a bibsuleha because she never had nisuin, so she never had cohabitation. There actually it would be different. But here where it's alese and aseh, so then that does not exempt the co-wives. Now, although kedushin is going to take effect and it's going to exempt her, but not the co-wives. And the reason is since the acquisition that he's having in her it's not full-fledged biblically, because he's still forbidden to go ahead and marry her even the first time, because the aseh is not dirlis of aseh. So this is like somewhere in the middle. So therefore, her co-wife at least is not permitted to someone else until chalitza is done to permit it to marry to a zar. Halachit Beis, the Ram continues regarding the Yavama that was forbidden to her husband. Says the Ram, let's say the Yavama was an erva on her husband. Could go in, for example, let's say the original husband who passed away, either he violated or he made a mistake. And he didn't realize that he was doing something wrong, or he did realize, and he married his paternal sister. And now he died without any children, and now the wife is falling in front of his brother for Yibbum. So it comes out which it's also his sister, because the Yibbum is only the paternal brother, which it's his paternal sister too, and she's the erva on the Yavim too. So it says the Rambam, Einzu Ishtai. This is not the wife of the brother who passed away. She Kedushin Tevseba, because they might have been living together, acting as husband and wife, but Kedushin never took effect because she's an erva. Therefore, she's not in the category of having Yibbum done with her or even the Chalitza being done with her, because she wasn't the wife of the dead person. Now, therefore, if she had a co-wife, meaning the one who passed away had another wife that was permitted to him, that co-wife, you could do either Chalitza or Yibbum, because like a regular man who died without any children with this one wife, because that other woman that wasn't even a wife. Now, if this woman that was an erva to the one who passed away is actually muteris liyavim, is actually permitted to the brother that's alive. For example, let's say his brother violated and married his mother-in-law, which that has nothing to do with the brother, so it's an erva for the one that passed away, but not for the yavam. And now what the yavam wants to do, he wants to marry his brother's mother-in-law and to do yibum to the co-wife. So Rosh Hashanah, he could do that, because these are not two yavamas from Bayis Echad, which you're not allowed to do, because the erva, the mother-in-law, is not from this house. She wasn't even considered married to him at all. So therefore, doing B with her does not exempt the co-wife, and therefore he could do Yibum on the one wife, which was a co-wife we thought, but really only one wife, and the mother-in-law, who's the erva on the one who passed away, he could marry too, and that's okay. Halacha Yud Gimel. He say Yavama Asura al Bala Mishum Lav. If the Yavama was forbidden on her husband because of a negative prohibition, because of a positive commandment, or she's a secondary erva to her husband. For example, let's say she was a widow that was engaged to the Kohen Gadol, his brother, and passed away, and the Yavam is a Kohen Head. So it comes out that she was forbidden to her husband with a negative prohibition because she was a widow, which is forbidden to the Kohen Gadol. But the brother, the Yavam, he's a regular Kohen Head who's permitted to marry an almana. As the Ram says, and whatever this was, a negative prohibition, positive commandment, secondary erba, that was only a problem for her husband and not for the Yavam. So she's permitted to the Yavam because she was a wife of the husband who passed away, and there's no isser on that brother-in-law. Except an interesting case, if a man had a wife, a regular wife, divorced her, she got married to someone else, and then the husband remarried her, and then he died. There actually, the Yavam has to do chalitza and not yibum. The reason for that is a svara, because if the man that she was permitted to, she subsequently became forbidden to, which was her husband, or once she got married to someone else, she was forbidden to her husband. So the one that she was always forbidden to, which is a Yavam, isn't all the more so that his whole strength comes from his brother's marriage, who his brother himself was forbidden to her. So for sure the Yavam is going to be forbidden to her, and therefore he can't do Yibum, but of course the Kedushin was Teifer, so therefore he has to do Chalitza. So too, if the Yavama was a doubt if she was an erva on the yavam, or it wasn't clear if she's an erva on her husband. Here also, since you're not sure, she might be a regular yavama, might be not, because we're not sure it's an erva or not. So out of doubt, you have to chalitza and not to yibbum. Therefore, if someone gets engaged to a woman and it's not clear if that was a valid kedushin or not, then his brother, who's married to the sister, so this guy is still alive, the guy who we're not sure was that a kedushin or not, the rabbis are looking into it, not sure what happened, but the brother actually was married to the sister, and he died without any children. But nafli liyibum, and now his brother's wife now falls for him for yibum. She's sveika sister. We're not sure, is that his wife's sister, which is an erva? It might be his wife's sister. It might not be, because it might not be his wife. Again, that woman you have to chalitza on, and not yibum. And actually, umaytzias ishta, quote unquote, which we're not sure if it's really his wife. Umaytzias ishta beget, he has to divorce his wife or to get misafik out of doubt, and they're staying asurus alav, and both of them are going to be forbidden, as the Rambam explains. Yevimta neshi sveik erva, his yavama from his brother who passed away, he has to do chalitza. He can't do yibum because she might be an erva, she might be his wife's sister. But varasasi, the woman that he's maybe engaged to, sveik krevas chalutzase, because it's a doubt if it's the relative of his chalutza, because this yavama is not a definite chalutza. If the woman he was engaged to is really engaged to him, comes out that really the yavama, his brother's wife, was really exempt from having chalitza at all because she was a chaysishtay, and therefore the chalitza is insignificant. If the woman he thinks is his wife was not really engaged to him, then actually the yavama had zika to him, and therefore was a valid chalitza. So it comes out that his yavama was a safek chalutza. We're not sure if she's really his chalutza, and therefore his arusa, the woman that we weren't sure if he was engaged to or not, is the relative of the woman that we're in doubt if it's his chalutza. Shikishni, that has halacha like a secondary erva, kamish brand, like we explained in Parak Alpha Lachid Gimel. Therefore, you would have to do chalitza and not, and therefore he would have to divorce his wife because of it's a suffix if she's the karev of his chalutza. Halacha Yidal Ram continues regarding the isser known as tsaras erva, the co-wife of the erva. Says Ram Mishneh Torah, if someone's brother passed away, he left over two wives. One of them was forbidden to him as an erva because let's say it was his daughter, his brother married his daughter. But the second wife wasn't the erva to him, was some other woman that his brother had married. Says the Rambam, just like as we explained this already, that the erva is exempt from the whole parasha, no yibum, no chalitza. So to the co-wife is also exempt. And therefore there's no bond here with the yavam at all with his brother's widows. Because it says in the pasuk, that the brother that's not going to build his brother's house, what that teaches is if it's a house that he could take whichever one of the co-wives that he wants to, that's where there's the bond. But if it's a house that some of the house he can't build, because he has no right to marry, because again one of them is an erva, let's say his daughter, then he can't even build the rest of it, meaning the other wife, which is permitted. So Benimtzis actually comes in interestingly. Tsaras erva, the co-wife of the erva, is an erva alav mishamesha sachav. As we're going to develop this shortly, she herself is not just the co-wife of an erva. She now has the status of herself as an erva because it's his brother's wife, which what's called shalei b'makam mitzvah, when you live a mitzvah purpose, which is a regular bona fide erva, shari en lo yela zika because it doesn't have a zika bond. So she remains with the issa eshes ach shalei b'makam mitzvah, which is a regular erva. A person cannot marry his brother's wife only in the situation when he does without any children. That's the mitzvah of yibum chalitza. Now, lefikach therefore, there says Ram halacha tezvav. Since we're saying that the tzarsa erva itself is an erva, like a brother's wife, when you don't have the mitzvah of yibum, so Reuven shemes. Reuven passed away. Benichte noshme leaves over two wives. Ha'achas erva al Shimon. One of them is an erva on his brother Shimon. Let's say it's Shimon's daughter. Ushtain ruis Levi, but the third brother Levi, it's not. None of them are related to him. They're both permitted for Levi. So in lo Shimon zika ba'yezeh, like we explained in the previous halachos, Shimon has no bond here at all on this house. V'ushtain tachas zikas Levi. Now they both have a bond to Levi. Now let's say Yibum Levi Achas Man. Let's say Levi goes and does Yibum to one of the co-wives. She tzarts erva shel Shimon. Which one does he choose? He chooses the co-wife of the erva of Shimon. I mean, not Shimon's daughter, but the other wife. Now Levi had another wife besides the woman that he did Yibum from the brother Reuven, and then Levi passed away without any children. Now both these wives are falling for Yibum in front of Shimon. Shteim beturis min chalitza min Yibbum Shimon, and both now are going to be exempt from chalitza Yibbum from Shimon. Why? Ha'achas, one of them is tzaras erva. She was the tzara of the ervo and became forbidden to him when Reuben had died, where she was a co-wife of his daughter, and therefore she becomes herself like an erva. Now Vashni, the second wife of Levi, because she's the co-wife of Shimon's daughter, which we said the tzaras erva itself is like an erva, and now therefore the other wife is a tzara of her. And the same thing continues if, let's say, the co-wife of that co-wife. So let's say the co-wife of the co-wife of his daughter, which was the other wife of Levi, goes and does Yibbum to Yehuda, another brother. And Yehuda has another wife, and he doesn't have any children. And falls in front of Shimon. Both are going to be usher. One's because tzarasa, which became forbidden when she was like the Eshesach of Levi and therefore an erva, and comes out that the other wife of Yehuda, the tzara, is also a tzara erva, and this continues at Sefer Olam till no matter how many brothers there are. And the reason is to call Isha she'en lo aleh zikr, because any woman that does not have a bond to the Yavam, but Issa Eshesach medis lo olam, retains forever the prohibition of a brother's wife. And therefore, it's like a bona fide erva, which is going to make, whenever she remarries someone else, even that co-wife, is going to make the next co-wife into an erva of tzaras erva. Ram continues on with another exemption from the halachas of Yibbum, known as v'chein eshes, and so to the wife of achiv shlahai b'lamai. If he had a brother that wasn't with him in the world at the same time, meaning this brother was born after the brother passed away without any children, his wife, since this yavam does not have a zika bond, the one that was born after his brother had died, although she's a widow and she doesn't have any children, he never had a bond with her. Because remember the pasuk says over there, when brothers were dwelling together, then there's an obligation of one brother to do Yibbum, which is until both of them were in the world at the same time. So harizu erva of la'olam shemeshesach. So here it's the same idea. It's not only that there's an exemption, she actually becomes an erva of eshesach ubeitar sarasa. And again, she'll exempt her co-wife. As the Rambam continues, Allah Chitzah, and Kate said, how so? So let's say Reuben shemes. Let's say Reuben passed away, v'nich isha, and he left over a wife. V'naf lives in Shimon, and now she falls for Tibum to Shimon the brother. The Acha shemes Reuben, and now after the Reuben passed away, Noy Levi, a third brother, was only born after Reuben had passed away. So Ben Shana Levi Koyin Shimon lo Shimon. Now whether Levi is being born before Shimon does Yibbum, Ben Shana Acha Shiyima, whether he's born after he had done Yibbum, which is a machlekes in the Gemara and the Rambam is passing like that mandama, that doesn't make a difference. But ultimately he's born after one of his brothers, that wife had been a widow before he came to the world. So Reuben's wife is an erva on Levi forever because she was Eshes Achiv Shlahai Bailamai. Therefore, that's where it continues. Not only is she exempt, but she becomes an erva of Eshes Ach Shlahai B'Malka Mitzvah. It may Shimon, if Shimon dies now without any children, Levi. Now here that co-wife and the tzara fall under Levi. Both of them exempt because here we have that the woman herself, the Eshes Ach Shlahai B'Lamai, is an erva, and now her tzara is a tzara's erva. Halacha Yudches. Now let's say Asa Shimon Maimer Bivim. Here's what gets a little bit more interesting. Let's say Shimon did not do Yibbum. He did Maimer in the Yavama, who is Eshes Reuben, the wife of Reuben. Umeiz Koyd Mashiach Nasai. So now he died before he actually consummated, before he did Yibbum with her. But he did Maimer. So here's a different halacha. This Hari Levi Chalitz L'Tzarasa. Here Levi has to do Chalitza to the co-wife, and she's not exempt because she's a Tzara's erva, because she's not literally a Tzara, because Shimon never did Yibbum to her, only give her a Maimer. Now, but neither can he do Yibbum because Maimer ultimately does acquire her partially. So she is somewhat this quasi tzaras erva rabbinically, as the Rambam says, because Maimer is not a full-fledged kinyan in the Yavama, like we explained in Parakeh, Halacha Beis, and Halacha Gimel. So therefore, if Shimon only did a Maimer, it would be this quasi tzaras erva of Eshes Achiv Shlahai B'Lamai, and therefore Levi would have to do chalitza and not Yibbum. Now the same thing actually would be, even if Shimon didn't even do a Maimer in the Yavama and he dies, the tzar would be chaletz of lemesebemis, because from the moment that there's a zika to Shimon, she already becomes like somewhat engaged to him. So it comes out that it was the wife of Shimon, and therefore it was like a tzara through the zika. All the Rambam is coming to tell us is that even if he had done a Maimer, it's not like he was married to her to exempt the tzara totally from chalitza and from Yibbum, because again the Maimer is not kohen kinyan, so it still remains in this quasi, but the quasi would be even if he didn't even do a Maimer at all. Now, a related discussion with this idea is, in Halacha Yates, the Rambam continues regarding the prohibition of a tzara of a woman that was forbidden to her husband. It says the Rambam like this: Isha shezinza tachas bayla beratzon ube'edim. If a woman was mizana, she had an extramarital affair when she was still married with her husband, and she did this beratzon, she did this with consent, ube'edim, and there were witnesses that she was mizana. Now, umeis kedem shegir shena. Now, however, the husband died before he was able to divorce this woman who was unfaithful. V'nafel of neyavam. Now, he died without any children. Now, his wife falls for Yibbum to the brother-in-law. Allah is Ari Betur ben Chalitza Yibbum. She's actually exempt from Chalitza from Yibbum. And Mechin Tzarasa, so to her co-wife. Kilo Hesa Erva al Yavam. It was as if she was an Erva on the Yavam, which again, like we said, the Erva exempts not only herself, but also the Tzara. Why is she an Erva? Nesha Tumah Ksuba Bakarais, because it used the terminology of Tumah. That, like what it's written by the Arais, meaning by the Arais, that Tapasim Yikra al Titam B'chalela. Don't become defiled by having relations to any one of these Arais. Now, this woman who is Mizana, it says similarly the same terminology of Tumah. Shem, like it says in the Pasuk, V'nitma, it says by the woman that was Mizana, and she became Tummy. So essentially it's saying that a woman who is Mizana Tachas Baila has the same status as an Erva, which again, for the laws of Yibbum, means to say that not only is she exempt, but she's also going to exempt her Tzaris. Now, that's a woman that we know definitively was Mizana. But regarding the suspected adulterous woman, where her husband died before he got a chance to give her the bitter waters to drink, which it inspects her to see if she really was Mizana or not. Or let's say she's not from the women that drink these waters. For example, she was only engaged, or the wife of a lame person, all those which Rambam explains in Hilchos Yibbum that don't drink the waters. Elabas Gerishin, rather she's supposed to be divorced. So that woman, if she falls for Yibbum to her Yavam, he's going to do chalitza to her because she's not definitively tamei, so she does not have that halacha that we mentioned before of being an erva. But neither could he do Yibbum, because if she's forbidden to her husband, the site is forbidden to her husband, so then the man that she's forbidden to, the yavam, for sure here where he's coming, his whole strength is from the first husband who's forbidden. For sure he's going to remain forbidden, therefore the yavam cannot do Yibbum. Now the Maisel Tzar, if she had a co-wife, actually a co-wife is permitted, and v'chaletzes and misabemes, she could do chalitza, or she could do Yibbum, like the tzara of any chiyuv alavan, which could do chalitza or Yibbum. It's only that of an erva that's exempt from chalitza Yibbum. Halacha chav. So there's two women, two yivamas that are from one house, meaning from one husband who died without any children. That one of them was a secondary erva on the yavam, and this is like what we just mentioned in the previous halacha, or which is just a negative prohibition, or just a positive commandment, or let's say that one of those women was a woman that's not fit to give birth, which, as we mentioned previous halacha ches, is exempt from chalitza and Yibbum, but again, she's not an erva. So her co-wife is permitted or Yibbum. Now, the Yivim to blessed does some of this chalitza to his Yivama. And then the sister of the woman that he did chalitza, or her mother, or similar relatives, goes and gets married to his brother. And that brother, besides having gotten married to the relative of the woman that he did chalitza to, he has another wife, and he doesn't have any children. Both of them fall in front of him. So Kashem Shekrevis Chalutza says Surulav, just like the relative of the woman he did chalitza is forbidden on him, because as the Rambam had said in Perak Aleph, that the woman that he does chalitza to is like the woman that he divorced, and you're forbidden in the relatives of the woman you divorced. So to the relatives of the chalitza, Kach Tzarasa, so to the co-wives are going to be forbidden. And now Varushtein Kishnius, so now both of them are like a secondary erva, because this halacha of chalutza, the relatives, is only rabbinic. So like any issur that you have, we don't allow you to say aseh de chalitza. It says you got to do chalitza and you can't do Yibbum. Now, but says Rambam, why did they say it's forbidden to marry the co-wife of the relative of the chalutza? Because as it is, the relative of the chalutza itself is rabbinic law. Why do we say that the co-wife is also forbidden? Because it actually gets confused with the co-wife of the chalutza herself. Because when the woman goes to court to get a chalitza, she brings her sister as emotional support. Now, it's confusing which one's Rachel, which one's Leah. If we're going to say that you could do Yibbum to the co-wife of the relative of the chalutza, you might come to think that you could actually do Yibbum on the tzara of the chalutza itself, which that you're not allowed to. So therefore, because of that confusion, they said you can't even do Yibbum to the tzara of the kreves chalutzas. Halacha Chavav, the Rambam continues regarding the permissibility of the tzara of an erva. Says the Ram, Shtei Yavamis habayis m'bayis echad. If you have two Yavamis that are coming from one house, meaning two wives of one man, sha'achas min erva al yavam. One of them is an erva on the yavam. V'harei ha'erva islandess. Now, although we had previously said that tzaras erva is exempt, she's not. You can't do Yibbum VChalitzah. It's like eshach shlohay boilama, like shlohay mitzvah. But let's say v'erva islandess. Here it's a double whammy. She's an erva, which is one entity, and then she's also an islandess. Then tzaras muteres. Then the tzar is permitted. And that she could have chalitza or Yibbum. Now, what's the reason? Because since the islandess is not in the category of Yibbum VChalitzah, so it's like she's not, like almost like she doesn't exist, and therefore her tsar is not really a tsar of an erva, because although that islandess is an erva, but that's only if she would have in the parsha, and then the Issa erva makes it forbidden, and therefore the tsar is a tsar's erva. But here's not because of an erva, she's an islandess. The islandess is not in the parsha at all. So it's like she's not there, and therefore there's only the bond on the co-wife itself, and therefore she could have Yibbum VChalitzah. Another case is, let's say his brother divorced the erva, or she was a katana and she did a refusal, which she could recluse herself from that marriage before his brother died without any children. Or another case, she died when her husband was still alive, and then the brother dies. Then the tsar of the erva is going to be permitted. Why? Because we don't say, we don't say, once she was a co-wife of the erva, even for one moment, sometime during the marriage, before she got divorced or before she died, etc., that then the co-wife should be forever forbidden. Says Ram, no. Because the co-wife is not forbidden as a tsar of an erva, until she's the co-wife of the erva at the time when Yibbum is happening. And since at the time when the husband's dying, she's not in the picture anymore, either because she was divorced, or didn't mean, or because she died, then the tzara, again, just like the previous halacha, that here in those cases, tzaras erva will be permitted to have Yibbum VChalitzah. Halacha of base. Let's say this woman that was an erva on the yavam was mukadeshes la'achav shemes, was engaged to his brother who passed away besafik, was only in doubt. Or she was divorced out of doubt. We're not sure if she was divorced or not. Or she was a minor that was fit to do miyun, but she didn't do miyun in her brother's lifetime. So even if this woman ultimately does miyun in the yavam, all these cases that we described, here the tzar is going to do chalitza and not Yibbum. Well, we're on the first cases because you're not sure if this is a tzar of erva or not, because you're not sure if there was a kedushin, not sure if there was a gerushin. And even over here, by the ketana, since at the time that the Yibbum was happening, she looked like a tzar's erva because the ketana had not done miyun yet, so you can't do Yibbum on the tzar, so that you don't come to disgrace the halacha of a tzar's erva to think that you can do Yibbum, because here it has the appearance of a tzar's erva, and then we have the chalitza and not Yibbum. Halacha of Gimel. Halacha tzaras erva. Let's say the tsar of an erva goes. When this is la'achar, she marries someone else. We said that tzaras erva has no halacha Yibbum VChalitzah. She can marry whoever she wants to. Problem is, now this is where it relates interesting back to what we said in halacha of Alf. Let's say subsequently they find out that actually that erva was an islandess. So wait a second. Comes out that actually the co-wife had zika to the Yibbum, because like we said, if the erva is an islandess, which the islandess is not in the parsha b'chalitza, it's like she's not here, so then you're not a tzar of an erva. You're one zika. So it comes out this that she married someone else was inappropriate. So actually, teitzat tzar me'balam yavam. Now the tzara, this co-wife who had married someone else, has to leave from the husband that she got married to, and from the yavam, because she's like a woman that was married with the zika and had relations with someone else. Which she get so she has to get a get from her husband, because kedushin was taifas, because it was only Isra Lav, and she needs chalitza from her yavam, so to permit her to get married to someone else. Now the child's not a mamzer, because again, Yavam Lazar is only an Isra Chiva Lavin, and there's no mamzer from Chiva Lavin. Halach of Dalet. Yibem hayavam hatzara. Let's say the yavam had done yibum to the co-wife. Why? They thought, here it's the inverse. They thought the erva was an alnus, which we said, then you're not a tzaras erva. So then there's a zikah to the yavam, so he did yibum. Then it turns out actually there was a mistake. The erva actually was not an alnus, so it comes out she was really a tzar of an erva, which therefore she's forbidden to the yavam because of eshazach shalei mitzvah. So takes me yavam beget, so she has to leave from the yavam with a get, because although she's from the chiva krisis, which is the eshazach shalei mitzvah, and kedusha is not taifas, but she needs a get because maybe people are going to say that the brother had divorced the erva right before he died, and therefore the Yibbum with the tzara is appropriate, and comes out when he's going to release her as a married woman without a get, it's going to look like that you're releasing a married woman without a get. So therefore that's why we rabbinically require a get. And Vavod Mamzer, the child's going to be Mamzer, because this is from a union of an erva, which was forbidden to the Yavam as a tzaras erva, which they thought it wasn't, but turns out it was. Now, Lochavei, the Ram continues in a little more sophisticated case, where you have a tzaras erva, but it's only a tzara of an erva through zika, which we're saying the zika is like this bond, where just automatically when his brother dies around their children, it's like this quasi-marriage to the Yavam. Says Ram Shleisha Achen, if there's three brothers, two of them are married to two sisters, and the third one's married to an unrelated woman. And then the one who is married to this unrelated woman, he dies without any children. Now it comes out that woman now has zika of Yibbum to each one of these brothers who are married to his sisters. Then now neither one of them had done Yibbum to this woman yet. Now one of the brothers who's married to the sisters, he now dies without any children too. Now his wife is forbidden on the other brother because of erva, because it's that guy's wife's sister. So now even that other unrelated woman, that one remaining brother has to chalitza on her and not do Yibbum. Now, although that woman had not done Yibbum with anyone, but since that when the other brother was still alive, there was a zika bond with him, so it's like she's the tzara of a chaysishtay because of the zika, and therefore you cannot do Yibbum. Now, obviously you have to chalitza because the zika doesn't make it like literally married to that brother, to make it like a bona fide tzaras erva to exempt it from chalitza, but it requires chalitza and not Yibbum. Because on some level she's like the co-wife of his wife's sister through the bond of his brother who passed away that second time. Not only that, even if one of the brothers who's married to the sisters subsequently divorced his wife after the one who was married to the unrelated woman, after he passed away, and he didn't even marry that nachas, that unrelated woman. Now, then after he had already divorced his wife, only then did he die. Still, that random woman's going to have to have chalitza, not Yibbum. Why? Because since for one moment she was the co-wife of his wife's sister, which was that one who died, who had divorced actually that sister, but for one moment they were this, so to speak, co-wives before he divorced his wife, where even now she's going to have the halacha that he cannot do Yibbum with her. Why? It's a rabbinic concern, because Shem Tis Yabim, if we're going to allow Yibbum, which really we should allow, because by the time he died, which we said at the time of death, she wasn't a Itzara, and we said it's only at the time of death, but Shem Yava Liyam Ma'isa, because if he's going to do Yibbum, Shem Yava Liyam Ma'isa, then they might come to do Yibbum with her, even in the case where this last one who died didn't divorce his wife, which is one of the sisters, which is going to come out, that unrelated woman is going to be the tzara of a chaysishtay with zika, which is forbidden to the third brother, and therefore even when he did do divorce, even so rabbinically we consider that as forbidden to do Yibbum and only la chalitza. Now, in halacha above, the Ram continues, then if that's the case, so why didn't they make this decree when there was marriage? Sharit tzaras erva b'nisun, as we explained in the previous halacha, the co-wife of an erva through marriage, they were married together, not just zika. The halacha is megirish as erva meis. We had mentioned earlier that if the husband had divorced the erva and then he died, the co-wife is permitted to the yavam, like we explained in halacha of Alev. So why is zika worse than that of marriage? If anything, it's just a zika. Marriage, you said, if he did divorce her before he died, it's actually permitted. So the Rambam, because the prohibition of the co-wife of an erva when they were married together, meaning the husband had married both of them, well, that's well known, because that's biblical. No one's going to come to permit the co-wife if he had not divorced the erva. So if he did divorce, it's going to be permitted. But the isitzaras erva bezika, but regarding the prohibition of the co-wife of an erva that was only a co-wife through the zika bond, in Yedula call, it's not well known to everyone because that's only rabbinic. Never going to come to permit the co-wife of ever, even if the erva was not divorced. So because of that preventative, we have to go so far to forbid it, even if he had divorced her before he died. Halakha of Zayin, the Ram continues regarding a very unique case, a rabbinic invention, so to speak, of a Yavama that has two zikais on her. As Rambam explains, Shleisha Achen, 3 brothers. Nesuin Shalosh Noshim Nachri is married to 3 random women. Meis Echemim, one of the brothers died. V'asa Sheni Maimer B'vimta. So one of the 2 remaining brothers did Maimer, which is rabbinic kedushin, in the Yavama. Umeis Kaim Sheichnes, and he died before he was able to consummate and do Yibbum on that Yavama. Now, V'naf L'shtein L'fnei Yavam. Now both wives, that of the first brother and then of the second brother, both their wives falling in front of the third brother, the Yavam. Harei L'chodz is L'mei Z'Abbas, he has to do Chalitza in them and not Yibbum. Why? Neshabailas HaMaimer, the woman that had the Maimer done with the second brother, when she had been widowed from the first brother, allows Zika Shnei Yavaman. In some level, she has a bond of 2 Yavaman on her. Because as long as the second brother didn't do Yibbum, the Zika bond from the first brother is still there, because he didn't fully do Yibbum on her. Now, in addition, the Zika of the second brother is also on her, because since he did Maimer on her, so when he dies, there's also a Zika of marrying his Yavama, his widow. It's almost like as if she's the wife of 2 dead brothers. But the sages, they expounded and they said, it says in the Torah, Eishes HaMeis. It has to do Yibum on the wife of the dead person, which is singular, but not the wife of 2 brothers that died. And any woman that has on her the bond of 2 of the brothers, you only do chalitza not Yibum, so to the co-wife, you'll do chalitza only. And really, says Rambam, the prohibition is really from rabbinic law as a gezerah. Because maybe people are going to say that 2 Yavamas that come from one house, meaning from one husband, could do Yibbum, but since only rabbinically forbidden, it requires chalitza. But why can't you do chalitza to the woman that had a maimer, that has on her this bond from 2 other brothers? So once you do chalitza to her, then why can't you do Yibbum to the co-wife? That's a concern. That people shouldn't say that you could have 2 Yavamas from one house, where here this brother, the second brother to die, you're going to do chalitza on the balas maimer, and then you're going to do, because you can't marry the wife of 2 dead people, so do chalitza, and then you're going to do the Yibbum on the other one, where it looks like it's from one person, which really it's not, just that he had done a maimer. People are going to think that achas chalitza v'achas mitzvah that you can do chalitza on one, which is what he's doing in the balas maimer, and then do Yibbum on the other, which that you can't do, because what's called once you were loy ban the shubla yivna, as we had said in Parak Aleph, once you didn't build one that you did chalitza, you can't do Yibbum on the other one. Therefore, they said that even the co-wife is going to be forbidden, and even if you would want to do Yibbum first and then do chalitza afterwards to the balas maimer, that would also be forbidden, because then you might do chalitza first and then the Yibbum, and then which will be in the same problem as we're mentioning here. Halacha Chavtes. If someone does a maimer in his Yavama, Benasib get lamamari, and then after he did a maimer, he gave her a maimer, he gave a get for that maimer, which is undoing that maimer, and then he passed away. So Chazal Tesha goes back to her initial permissibility, where as if he didn't do anything. Because the maimer that made her forbidden to anyone else, he nullified. And so the remaining brother, if he wants to, he could do chalitza, or he could do that of Yibbum. Now, halacha lamed says the Rambam, ben if you have a 9-year-old, shabal yevimte, that he cohabits with his yavama, and he dies when he's still a minor. And now that the younger brother died, which this younger brother had done yavam from a different brother, now it's falling a second time in front of the older brother. Here, here the third brother, who is an adult, who saw she be widowed from 2 of his brothers, he has to chalitza not Yibbum. Why? Because the cohabitation of this 9-year-old is kamayim nagala kamesh ranu. It's like the maimer from an adult brother, as we had explained this in Perek Hey Halach Yud Ches. But nimtzoleh zika shnei yavam. So it comes out that really she's like this category of a balas maimer, which has the zik of 2 yavam, which again rabbinically we said you do chalitza not Yibbum. So although he had done bia, but his bia is like the status of a maimer. Halach laman alf. Misha chetzi shiv v'chetzi baschar, a woman that was half maidservant and half a free woman. That she was engaged to Reuven. Now, her kedushin is not fulfilled until she gets freed, because you can't marry a shevcha. But he had engaged her because she was half free. But then in the shachar, then she was freed. And then subsequently, when she was freed, she got engaged to Shimon. Now, and Reuven didn't divorce her, so now essentially, as the Gemara explains, she's like doubtfully engaged to both of them. Because like the Gemara Daf Mem Gimel says, on the one hand, if you say that when you free her, you could say that maybe that excludes, that removes the original kedushin, because now that she became totally freed, she becomes like a regular Jewish woman. And like any woman that becomes Jewish, like becomes a Gerish, she's like a newborn person, and therefore she's like whatever happened before was non-existent, and now the Kedushin of the second person is going to take effect. Or do you say that no, actually the Shech is going to conclude the Kedushin that he started when she was half free, and actually that it makes her full-fledged now the wife of the first one, and therefore actually the second one's forbidden, and therefore his Kedushin is not going to take effect. So it's this doubtful situation that two brothers had done Kedushin. We're not sure actually who is the Kedushin for. Now both brothers, Reuben and Shimon, passed away without any children. This woman that was one point that became a full-fledged Baskarin, Levi, the third brother, could do Yibbum on her. And this, as the Rambam is coming to explain, is not the problem what we said in the previous halachas as the wife of two dead people to say, oh, she's half to Reuben, half to Shimon. No. As the Rambam explains, because in Kedushin, Reuben Kedushin, as we explained, if the Kedushin of Reuben was a valid Kedushin, which was fulfilled and completed when she was freed, so in Kedushin Shimon Klum, that means to say the Kedushin of Shimon was non-existent at all, because Kedushin not tevus in an Eishes Ish. Vim Kedushin Shimon Kedushin, if the Kedushin of Shimon is a valid Kedushin, because, like we said, that the freeing of her in between actually removes the Reuben's Kedushin, then in Kedushin Reuben Klum, then Reuben's Kedushin is nothing. So it comes out at the end of the day, she's only the wife of one dead person. We don't know which one it is, but Manav Shach, either one, it's going to be the wife of only one of the brothers, and therefore Levi could do a valid Yibbum on her.